The unsolved case of room 428. The file labeled Unsolved, Case Number 428, sat in the archives of the police department for decades. No one dared to reopen it. It wasn't just another missing person report. It was a story so terrifying that even the officers who handled it refused to speak of it. It all began in 1989 at the St. Mark's Motel in Ohio, a small roadside inn with peeling paint, flickering neon signs, and a dark history. Room 428 was its most infamous suite, earning a reputation for strange occurrences, bizarre deaths, and inexplicable disappearances. Guests complained of hearing whispers, seeing shadowy figures, and waking up with scratches on their bodies. The motel owner dismissed these claims as nonsense, but when a young couple vanished from room 428 without a trace, the case became a nationwide sensation. Lisa and Greg Mitchell were a newlywed couple on a road trip from Chicago to Florida. They had booked room 428 for one night, intending to rest before continuing their journey. According to the motel's night clerk, they checked in around 8 p.m., laughing and holding hands. The next morning, their car was still in the parking lot, but the room was empty. The door was locked from the inside, and their belongings, including wallets, keys, and phones, were untouched. The motel manager, a grizzled man named Walter, was the first to investigate. He unlocked the door with his master key and immediately felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The air was cold and smelled of something metallic. The bed was unmade, and the walls were smeared with what looked like handprints made of soot. Walter called the police. Detective Sarah Whitman was assigned to the case. She was a seasoned investigator who had seen her share of gruesome crime scenes, but room 428 unsettled her. The forensic team combed through the room, but found no evidence of forced entry, no signs of a struggle, and no fingerprints besides those of the couple. The soot-like smudges on the walls were analyzed, but didn't match any known substance. The only clue was a series of faint scratches on the wooden floor, as if someone had been dragged. Sarah interviewed Walter, who admitted that room 428 had a history of complaints. Guests often reported hearing whispers in the middle of the night, objects moving on their own, and an oppressive feeling of being watched. Walter dismissed these stories as paranormal nonsense, but his voice shook as he described finding the room empty. The police canvassed the area, but no one had seen Lisa or Greg leave. CCTV cameras outside the motel showed nothing unusual. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Determined to find answers, Sarah dug into the motel's past. What she discovered made her blood run cold. In the 1960s, St. Mark's Motel had been the site of a gruesome murder. A man named Charles Denham, who worked as a traveling salesman, had stayed in room 428. One night, he brutally killed his wife and 2 children in that room before hanging himself from the ceiling fan. Witnesses reported that Charles claimed he was being tormented by voices that told him to kill his family. Over the years, several other guests staying in room 428 had reported eerily similar experiences: whispering voices, strange shadows, and sudden fits of rage. 2 suicides, 3 unexplained deaths, and countless complaints later. Room 428 became notorious. 2 weeks after Lisa and Greg's disappearance, the motel's housekeeper, Maria, found something horrifying while cleaning room 428. Under the bed, wedged between the slats, was a Polaroid photo. It showed Lisa and Greg sitting on the bed in room 428, their faces frozen in terror. Behind them, in the mirror, was a shadowy figure with glowing eyes. Maria handed the photo to the police, but the image disappeared from the evidence locker 3 days later. Detective Sarah became obsessed with solving the case. She spent hours poring over the motel's history, the police reports, and the missing photo. Convinced that room 428 held the key to the mystery, she decided to spend a night there. On the evening of October 31st, 1989, Sarah checked into room 428 under the guise of conducting further investigation. She set up a recorder, a video camera, and a notebook. Her last entry in the notebook read, "Something is wrong here. The air feels heavy, and I keep hearing footsteps, but no one is outside." The next morning, Sarah was found unconscious on the floor of room 428. Her hair had turned completely white, and she was unable to speak. She spent the rest of her life in a psychiatric hospital, scribbling the same phrase over and over. There in the mirror. After Sarah's breakdown, the St. Mark's Motel was shut down. Room 428 was sealed off, and the property was eventually abandoned. Urban explorers who have since ventured inside report strange occurrences: cameras malfunctioning, hearing whispers, and seeing figures in the mirrors. The Mitchells were never found, and their disappearance remains unsolved. The case of room 428 is still considered one of the most chilling mysteries in U.S. history. In 2022, a true crime YouTuber named Kyle Green decided to investigate room 428 for his channel. Armed with modern equipment, he spent the night filming inside the abandoned motel. The footage was uploaded to his channel 2 days later, but Kyle himself has not been seen since. The video shows Kyle exploring the room, joking nervously about the haunted legend. Toward the end of the video, Kyle looks into the mirror and freezes. His reflection doesn't move. Instead, it smiles. The video abruptly ends. The house that called me home. Have you ever had the feeling that a place has been waiting for you? Not just for years, but for lifetimes? That's exactly what I felt the moment I stepped into 48 Hartwell Lane. It knew me. It spoke my name. I received the letter on a gray, rainy morning. The envelope was thick, old-fashioned, and sealed with a crimson wax stamp. My name, Clara Hayes, was scrawled in ornate handwriting. Inside, a brief note read, "You are the last remaining heir. The house belongs to you now. Return to it and claim what is yours. 48 Hartwell Lane, Coventry." The name of the place stirred something in me, a memory I couldn't quite grasp. I didn't know anyone in Coventry. My parents were long gone, and as far as I knew, I had no extended family. Yet the letter felt personal, as if whoever sent it knew me deeply. Against my better judgment, I packed a bag and drove the 3 hours to Coventry. The house was colossal, looming against the darkening sky like a relic from another time. Vines snaked up its crumbling walls, and the windows were thick with grime. Yet it wasn't the appearance that unsettled me. It was the way the house seemed to breathe. As I walked up the steps, the heavy oak door creaked open by itself. "Hello?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the cavernous silence. The air was thick, carrying the scent of damp wood and something faintly metallic. The moment I stepped inside, I froze. The floorboards groaned beneath me, but it wasn't just the sound. It was the sensation. The house felt alive. And then I heard it. "Clara." A whisper, soft and unmistakable, coming from upstairs. The second floor was a labyrinth of decaying rooms. Most were empty, but one caught my attention. A bedroom, untouched by time. The bed was made, the wardrobe doors slightly ajar. On the dresser sat a photograph of a woman who looked exactly like me. She wore a 1920s style dress, her hair styled in soft waves. On the back of the photograph, a single word was scrawled, "Welcome home." My breath hitched. Who was this woman? And why did she look like me? As I rummaged through the room, I found a diary hidden beneath the floorboards. The pages were yellowed and brittle, but the handwriting was eerily familiar. It told the story of a woman named Evelyn Hayes, who moved into the house in 1925. Her entries were happy at first, describing her love for the house and its charm. But then the tone changed. The house speaks to me. It calls my name in the night. I see faces in the mirrors that aren't mine. I feel it watching me. Evelyn's final entry sent a chill down my spine. The house won't let me leave. It says I belong to it, and soon I will be a part of it forever. That night, I stayed in the house. Despite my unease, something compelled me to remain, as if I had no choice. I awoke at 3:15 a.m. to the sound of footsteps pacing above me. The attic, gripping a flashlight, I climbed the narrow staircase. The attic was dark and suffocating, the air thick with dust. My flashlight beam caught movement, shadows flitting across the walls. And then I saw it. A mirror, tall and ornate, stood in the center of the attic. As I approached, my reflection warped and twisted. It wasn't me looking back. It was Evelyn. She mouthed a single word. "Run." I spent the next day poring over every corner of the house. The basement revealed more photographs, all of women who looked like me, spanning decades, centuries even. Evelyn Hayes, Margaret Hayes, Charlotte Hayes. Every 50 years, a woman named Hayes inherited the house, and each one vanished without a trace. The walls were covered in strange carvings, symbols I didn't recognize. They seemed to pulse when I touched them, sending shocks through my body. That night, I dreamt of the house. In my dream, I saw myself as Evelyn, standing before the mirror. The house whispered to me, telling me I was chosen, that I would be its keeper for eternity. When I woke, I found dirt under my fingernails, as if I'd been digging. The house grew more malevolent with each passing day. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. I heard whispers behind locked doors, my name repeated over and over. I found myself losing time, hours gone, with no memory of what I'd done. One evening I noticed my reflection smiling when I wasn't. I smashed every mirror in the house, but the whispers only grew louder. "You cannot leave. You belong to us." Desperate for answers, I returned to the attic. There, I found a book bound in cracked leather. It was a ledger, documenting the lives of every Hayes woman who had lived and died in the house. The final entry was mine. Clara Hayes, born 1993, returned 2025. Sacrifice complete. Terror gripped me. The house had been waiting for me, biding its time. The whispers, the reflections, the carvings, they were all pieces of a ritual. The house consumed its owners, feeding on their lives to sustain itself. I knew I had to leave, but the house wouldn't let me. Every door slammed shut, the windows unbreakable. The air grew heavy, pressing against my chest. In a final act of desperation, I set the house on fire. Flames licked the walls, and the whispers turned to screams. As I fled into the night, I heard the house's final words. "You can burn me, but you can never escape me." Weeks later, I moved into a small apartment, trying to rebuild my life. One night, I heard a knock at my door. On my doorstep was a package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a photograph of the house, perfectly intact, with a note that read, "Welcome home." As I looked up, I saw the reflection of the house in my window, standing right behind me. The video began with Emma's trembling voice. "Guys, if you're watching this, don't make the mistake we did. Don't go to Ravenwood. It's not just haunted, it's alive, and it wants you." The screen flickered to a shaky view of her bloodied hand clutching a flashlight. Behind her, the guttural growl of something inhuman echoed, and a shadow darted across the frame. The video abruptly cut to black. Ravenwood Asylum stood at the edge of Pine Creek Forest, abandoned and rotting like a wound festering in the wilderness. For decades, it had been the subject of local legends, an asylum where patients had reportedly gone missing, shadows moved on their own, and a fire had mysteriously claimed dozens of lives. 5 friends, Emma, David, Lisa, Mark, and Natalie, were about to become part of that legend. They had heard the stories but brushed them off as superstition. As amateur YouTubers running a channel called Haunted Explorations, they thrived on the thrill of exploring abandoned places and debunking myths. "This is going to be our most viral video yet," David had said confidently as they planned the trip. The ultimate haunted asylum. But nothing could prepare them for what awaited inside. The group arrived just after sunset. The asylum's silhouette was barely visible through the dense fog, but its towering frame radiated a menacing aura. "Creepy as hell," Natalie muttered, hugging herself against the chill. Mark laughed nervously as he set up the gear. "The creepier, the better. Let's give our audience a show." The moment they stepped through the rusted gate, Emma felt a strange pull in her chest, a heaviness, as if the air itself were pressing against her. The asylum loomed closer, its shattered windows resembling empty, staring eyes. The group filmed their entry. Mark panned the camera across the crumbling facade, adding dramatic commentary. "This is Ravenwood Asylum, folks. Home to tragedy, mystery, and if the stories are true, restless spirits. We're here to find out the truth." The main door creaked open with an unnatural groan, as if the building were reluctantly allowing them inside. "Did you hear that?" Lisa whispered. "It's just the wind," David replied. But his voice lacked conviction. The lobby was a cavern of decay. Peeling paint hung from the walls like dead skin, and the floor was littered with broken furniture and torn patient files. Mark scanned the room with his camera. "This place looks like something out of a horror movie." Emma picked up a file from the floor. The name caught her eye. Eleanor Voss, patient number 1173. A photograph was stapled to the corner, showing a gaunt woman with hollow eyes. Beneath it were scribbled notes, hallucinations, claims of shadow figures, escalating violence. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from deeper within the asylum. "What the hell was that?" Natalie whispered, clutching David's arm. "Probably just a door slamming," he said, though his face betrayed his unease. They ventured deeper, the darkness swallowing their flashlights. The long hallway was lined with rooms, each one a silent tomb of forgotten lives. Emma's heart raced as they passed a padded cell. Scratches marred the walls, and words were scrawled in blood-red paint. "Don't trust the shadows." "Okay, this is officially terrifying," Lisa said, her voice shaking. The walkie-talkie crackled suddenly, spitting out static. Then, clear as day, a voice whispered, "Turn back." The group froze. Did that just happen?" Natalie stammered. "It's interference," David insisted, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. The further they went, the more oppressive the air became. Emma felt a gnawing dread, like they were being watched. When she glanced over her shoulder, she could swear she saw a shadow move, but there was no one there. Mark paused to adjust his camera. As he did, something caught Natalie's attention. A child's laughter. Soft, almost playful. It echoed down the corridor. "Did you guys hear that?" she asked. "Hear what?" David replied. It sounded like a kid laughing. They shone their flashlights ahead but saw nothing. When they turned back, the hallway behind them seemed longer, darker, as if the asylum were shifting. "This place is messing with us," Emma said, gripping her flashlight tightly. They entered a room filled with rusted medical equipment. Mark set up a motion sensor by the door. "If anything moves, we'll know," he said, forcing a grin. As they filmed, the motion sensor beeped. Everyone froze. "There's no one there," Lisa whispered, staring at the empty doorway. The beeping stopped, only to start again. Faster this time, like something was running toward them. "Run!" Emma shouted. They bolted, but the asylum seemed to twist around them. Hallways stretched infinitely, doors slammed shut, and whispers grew louder. "Stay with us." They regrouped in the main corridor, panting and terrified. "What the hell is going on?" David demanded. "It's not just a haunting," Emma said, clutching the patient file. "There's something in this asylum. Something Eleanor Voss saw." Mark checked the footage on his camera. His face turned white. "Guys, you need to see this." The video showed the group walking through the hallway, but behind them, a figure appeared. It was tall, impossibly thin, and cloaked in darkness. Its face was featureless, but its head turned toward the camera, as if aware it was being watched. "That's it. We're leaving," Natalie said. But when they reached the main door, it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard they pushed, it felt like an invisible force was holding it shut. The shadows grew darker, stretching toward them like living things. One by one, the lights on their cameras died. "Split up and find another exit," David shouted. Emma found herself alone, her flashlight flickering. The whispers were louder now, an unintelligible chorus of voices. She stumbled into a room and slammed the door shut behind her. The room was empty except for a mirror. As she approached, the reflection shifted. Instead of her own image, she saw Eleanor Voss staring back at her. "They'll take you," the reflection whispered. "Just like they took me." A shadow appeared behind her in the reflection, and Emma spun around. But it was too late. The video ended with Emma's final plea. "If anyone finds this, don't go to Ravenwood. It won't let you leave." The footage cuts off, leaving viewers with the haunting sound of static and a faint, bone-chilling whisper. "You're next." And so, the story ends? Or does it? What would you do if you saw something strange in your mirror tonight? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying stories. And remember, never look into a mirror alone at night. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.